If you grow hydrangeas, you must do this every August. Go stand in front of your hydrangea right now. Really look at it. The big blooms from June are gone soft and brown, curling in on themselves like old paper. The leaves are drooping by mid-afternoon even though you watered on Tuesday. And some part of your brain has already written this plant off for the year. The show is over, so you stop thinking about it. You move on to the tomatoes, the lawn, whatever else is demanding attention. That is the mistake. And it is a bigger mistake than almost anything else you will do in the garden this year. Because right now, while you have stopped looking, your hydrangea is not resting, it is working. Deep inside those stems, in the last weeks of summer heat, it is deciding what next June looks like. Every flower you will get next year is being built this month, quietly, invisibly, based entirely on how well you treat the plant right now. And here is the part that should genuinely worry you. If a big leaf or an oak leaf hydrangea gets stressed in August, if it dries out, overheats, or gets cut in the wrong place, it does not simply produce fewer flowers next year. It cancels the whole project. It stops forming buds altogether. A plant that fails to set buds in August does not bloom a little less next spring. It does not bloom at all. That is the answer to something a lot of you have experienced and never understood. A hydrangea gives you 2 beautiful years in a row, and then one spring it comes back green, full, healthy looking, and completely bare. No flowers anywhere. People assume it is the winter, or the soil, or bad luck. Go back and check what happened the August before that empty spring. Chances are it was hot, it was dry, and nobody was watching. The cause sits 10 months before the consequence, which is exactly why nobody ever connects the two. So here is the idea to hold on to for the rest of this video. A hydrangea flower is not made in spring. It is made in August, and then it waits. On old wood hydrangeas, that means big leaf, mountain and oak leaf types, the flower bud forms right now at the base of this year's growth, tucked into the point where a leaf meets the stem. It sits there through autumn, through frost, through the entire winter, fully formed and totally invisible, until spring finally wakes it up. The flower you photograph next June was actually built in the middle of a heat wave you barely remember. Once that clicks, August stops looking like a quiet, empty month and starts looking like the most important month of the entire hydrangea calendar. Every bit of care you give this plant right now is not keeping it alive until autumn. It is manufacturing next year's blooms in real time, which also means August is the most dangerous month to pick up a pair of pruning shears. More on that shortly. Propagate. Big leaf, panicle, smooth, oak leaf, or mountain hydrangea, or just describe the flower shape if you are not sure, because it changes exactly which part of this video matters most for you. Let's start with why this plant is so exposed to damage in the first place. It comes down to the roots. Hydrangeas have a shallow, fibrous root system that lives close to the surface, right in the layer of soil that dries out first and fastest once the heat arrives. This is not a plant with a deep taproot pulling moisture from 3 feet down. Its entire survival depends on the top few inches of ground, which is exactly the part August attacks hardest. That is why a hydrangea can look completely fine at 9 in the morning and be collapsed on the ground by 3 in the afternoon, and why the big leaf types, the classic round mophead flowers, are the thirstiest of the entire family. Here are the actual numbers. About 1 inch of water a week in ordinary conditions, closer to 2 inches during a real heat wave, and the delivery matters just as much as the amount. Water deeply 2 or 3 times a week rather than giving it a light splash every single day. You want the top 6 to 8 inches of soil to be genuinely damp each time, which for a mature plant in the ground usually works out to 1 or 2 gallons. The reason depth matters this much is that a shallow daily watering only ever wets the very top of the soil. The roots respond by staying right there near the surface where the moisture is. You end up training an already shallow-rooted plant to be even shallower, so it cannot survive 2 days without you. Deep, infrequent watering does the opposite. It pulls the roots down into soil that holds moisture far longer, which builds a plant that can actually handle a hot week on its own. 3 small technique details, and each one matters. Water at the base, straight into the soil, never over the top of the foliage, because wet leaves in warm, humid weather are an open invitation for fungal problems like leaf spot. Water in the early morning whenever possible, so the moisture has time to soak down to the roots instead of burning off in the afternoon sun, and so the plant starts the day already full. And if you want to take yourself out of the equation completely, a soaker hose or drip line at the base does the job automatically. Slow water sinks in, fast water just runs off. Now the test that saves you from guessing, and this one is worth remembering because hydrangeas are dramatic liars. They wilt hard in afternoon heat, leaves hanging low, looking like they are dying in front of you. Most of the time that is not thirst. It is just the plant losing water through its leaves faster than the roots can replace it, and it will straighten right back up once the sun goes down. So never judge a hydrangea by how it looks at 3 in the afternoon. Judge it by how it looks first thing in the morning. If it is still wilted at 8 after a full cool night to recover, that plant is genuinely dry and needs water. If it stood up fine overnight and only droops again in the afternoon heat, leave it alone. That is normal behavior for this plant. Back it up by pushing a finger 2 inches into the soil at the base. Dry down there, water deeply. Still damp, walk away. Deep watering 2 or 3 times a week, at the base, in the morning, checked against the morning droop and the finger test. That is the entire system. Quick question before we move into pruning, because the next part depends entirely on the answer. Which hydrangea do you actually have? In August, that single fact changes everything. On some types, cutting right now erases next summer's entire display. On others, it costs you almost nothing. Same shears, same afternoon, completely different outcome, and it all comes down to something most gardeners have never actually checked. If you want the full breakdown of all 6 hydrangea types, told apart in under 2 minutes, along with the exact pruning calendar for each one, so you never accidentally cut off your own flowers again, I put it all together in a written guide, linked in the description. It covers the real reason the color changes, which has almost nothing to do with what most people assume, and the handful of myths that quietly waste an entire growing season for people who believe them. Now, the cut. For most of you, the instruction this month is simple. Put the shears down. I know that sounds strange in a video about caring for your plant, but this is the single most damaging thing a well-meaning gardener does every August. The flowers have turned brown, the plant looks messy, and the urge to tidy it up is almost irresistible. Here is what happens if you give in to that urge on an old wood type. The buds for next summer are forming right now, tucked invisibly into the joints where the leaves meet the stem. There is nothing on the plant to warn you they are there. So you go out with the shears, cut off the ugly brown flower heads, take a little extra off the top to neaten the shape, and without realizing it, you have just removed next June's flowers. The punishment does not arrive for 10 months, which is exactly why almost nobody ever learns the lesson. Next spring the plant comes up green, healthy, and completely bare, and you blame the winter, so the fork in the road decides your entire August. If you are growing a big leaf, mountain, or oak leaf hydrangea, put the pruners away entirely. The only wood you touch is dead, broken, or diseased, nothing else. Save any real shaping for the correct window, which is right after flowering finishes next summer. If you truly cannot leave the brown flower heads alone, there is one rule that keeps you safe. Cut immediately below the spent flower, and stop at the first pair of healthy leaves beneath it. Do not go a single joint lower. Those small swellings hugging the stem below that pair are next year's flowers, already formed and waiting. If you are growing a panicle or smooth hydrangea, you are in much safer territory, because those bloom on new growth that has not even formed yet. Your real pruning window is late winter, and cutting now genuinely will not cost you next year's flowers. Even so, August is not the month for a hard haircut on any hydrangea, because a heavy cut this late pushes out soft new growth that will not have time to toughen up before frost arrives. In August, the most important cut is the one you decide not to make. Next, stop feeding it. Put the fertilizer bag back in the shed until spring. This is the mistake that catches people who are genuinely trying to help, because the logic feels correct. The plant is doing important work right now building next year's flowers, so surely it needs food to support that. It does not, and here is exactly why. Nitrogen makes leaves, that is what it does on every plant in every garden. A feed in August tells the hydrangea to push out a fresh flush of soft new growth at the exact moment it should be slowing down and hardening off for winter. That new growth has run out of season. It will not have time to mature before the first frost hits, so the cold kills it back. And those damaged stems are not reliable carriers of next year's flower buds. A late feed does not just fail to help your bloom count, it actively reduces it. You have spent this whole video protecting next year's buds by watering carefully, and a late feed undoes that from the opposite direction. The rule is simple. Heavy feeding stops by midsummer. In practice, that means one balanced feed in spring and nothing more for the rest of the season. And here is the most expensive misunderstanding in all of hydrangea growing. Fertilizer cannot fix a hydrangea that will not bloom. If the buds were cut off or aborted during a dry August, there is no product on any shelf that brings them back. You cannot feed a plant into flowers it never made in the first place. Watering builds next year's flowers. Feeding it in August quietly dismantles them. Then mulch it, and be careful not to overdo it. 2 to 3 inches of organic mulch around the base is not decoration, given everything we now know about those shallow roots living in the driest layer of soil. It is doing 3 jobs simultaneously. It slows evaporation so your watering lasts longer between sessions. It keeps soil temperature stable and those roots cooler through a heat wave. And it chokes out the weeds that would otherwise be competing for the same water. Use hardwood bark, composted wood chips, shredded leaves or clean straw, and keep it pulled back an inch or 2 from the actual stems, because mulch piled against woody stems traps moisture exactly where you do not want it. Mulch is the one thing on this list that keeps working for you, even when you are not in the garden. Now the warning, because after 5 minutes of telling you to water more, some of you are about to overcorrect and drown it. A drowned hydrangea and a thirsty hydrangea look almost identical from a distance. Both droop, both look sad. Here is the same check from earlier, used the other way. Wilting with dry soil 2 inches down means water it. Wilting with soil that is already damp or wet means the roots are struggling and more water only makes it worse. You are aiming for steady moisture, not a permanently soaked pot of mud. And a fork worth mentioning before we move on, because it changes every number I have given you. If your hydrangea is in a container, forget the twice or 3 times a week rule entirely. Pots heat up and dry out far faster than open ground, and in real August heat a potted hydrangea can need water every single day. Check it daily with your finger, rather than following a fixed schedule. Water until it runs out the bottom, and never let the pot sit in a saucer of standing water. In the ground you water on a rhythm. In a pot you water on inspection. One more thing before we wrap up, because August is also the best month of the year to make more hydrangeas for free. It fits the theme of everything else in this video, because it is another thing you do now that pays off much later. Take a cutting about 6 inches long from a stem that is not currently flowering, because a stem carrying a bloom is spending its energy on that bloom instead of on growing roots. Cut just below a node, where the leaves attach, and strip off the lower leaves entirely. Take the top 2 remaining leaves and slice them in half across the middle. It looks brutal, but it is correct, because a cutting with no roots yet cannot support a full set of leaves without drying out first. Push the cut end into a moist, free-draining mix of perlite and peat. Cover it loosely with a clear plastic bottle with the bottom cut off to hold humidity, and place it somewhere bright but out of direct sunlight, because direct sun turns that bottle into an oven and cooks the cutting by afternoon. Keep it lightly moist and be patient. That is a plant worth $30 at a garden center, grown from a stem you were about to throw away. Everything about August works this way. Nothing you do this month shows up this month. Before you go, send this to the one person you know with a big, healthy hydrangea that mysteriously did not flower this year. There is a very good chance the answer is sitting in last August, and nobody has ever explained it to them. So here is the whole thing in one idea. August is the month your hydrangea stops performing and starts building. The flowers are gone, the plant looks tired, and inside those stems, it is quietly manufacturing every single bloom you will see next summer. What you do this month will not show up this month, it shows up 10 months from now, and that gap is the entire reason almost nobody gets this right. 4 things, in order. Water it properly, about an inch a week, closer to 2 in real heat, delivered as 2 or 3 deep soakings at the base in the morning, judged by the morning droop, and confirmed with your finger 2 inches down. Put the shears down, and if it is a big leaf, mountain or oak leaf type, touch nothing but dead or broken wood, and if you must remove the brown heads, never cut below that first pair of healthy leaves. Stop feeding it, because a late feed pushes soft growth that frost will kill, and no fertilizer on earth can restore a bud that was never made in the first place. And mulch it, 2 to 3 inches, pulled back from the stems, because that is the one thing on this list still working while you are somewhere else entirely. Do those 4 things, and next June takes care of itself. Skip them, and you will spend next spring staring at a perfectly healthy green bush, wondering what went wrong, 10 months after it actually happened. A hydrangea does not fail in the season you notice, it fails in the season you stopped watching. If this helped, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which of these 4 you have been getting wrong, because I have a feeling for most of you it is the shears.